Hello, friends. So we are currently on May 1st. Happy May 1st. Happy first of the month to everyone. We are also celebrating Beltane currently, which is the point between the spring equinox, where we started Pearl Portal, and the summer solstice, which is the longest day of the year. So, this exact point was celebrated in pagan tradition as it's a way to kind of recognize where we're at uh, in our kind of cycle. And if you are reflecting on it, as I have been, it's really interesting to think about where we were during the equinox. Um, because for me, looking back in photos, I was back in Canada and we just arrived back to London 2 days ago. My voice is very, very funny today. It keeps acting up. And I was just looking at photos of where the greenhouse was before we left, where everything was, and it was spring, but nothing had kind of come out and been in its highest form of, you know, flowers blooming. And sure, there was cherry blossoms starting and there was crocuses and daffodils, but we were still very much in this growth point. And now we're kind of in the middle of it. And I think it's interesting that we started Pearl Portal on the equinox, and that this is also kind of following this similar line because we are going into week 6 this week. So we are at the halfway point in Pearl Portal as we are in the natural frequency and the natural nature kind of based movement and progression. And so I'm really curious how everybody's feeling. I think my voice is like so, and maybe I have some kind of throat chakra block, but basically, there's so much changing, and I don't know if you're feeling this too. The rapid expansion and exploration in terms of growth and transitions. Um, Personally, for me, this is just reflected in the way I'm caring for myself, the practices that I am imparting to continue these structures of care, which obviously extend out to the web of life around me. And some of this is through the work of having these daily exercises, whether it's doing the morning pages or going on the artist dates, which honestly, going on the artist dates was really difficult for me on Salt Spring because there's so few places to. I mean, I was often going to the thrift store or going on a walk or doing something like this, but in London, it's so much more potent for me. And so it's very interesting also to reflect on like what these two places are offering me and that I'm at this midpoint. It's very reflective of the work that I'm doing and the world around me. And I think this is something that we continue to notice as we progress through these kinds of deep immersions into our inner psyche and our inner worlds, where we start to notice that the more we tend to our inner world, the more it's reflected on the outside. So, something else that's been coming up very much for me is this practice of channeling. And this is something that I think I've always felt kind of allergic to. I think that's the best way to describe it. The allergy stems from growing up in a very spiritual community. Growing up on Salt Spring Island, it is extremely like there's so much hippies, there's so much energy of spirituality that's really not grounded. And I was talking to this with one of my best friends as we were discussing kind of, you know, if you think of the chakra system, which I created a course on this, and I think I'm going to bring it back just because to educate yourself on the chakra system, whether or not you believe in the chakras, there are physical representations in our body that reflect these things. And these things are being proved, like our heart, all these, our stomach, these things are being proven time and time again that where these chakra points are in our physical body reflect physical, what's the word I'm looking for? Basically, our physical body has many different brains. It's not exclusively the one that's in our head. There are many different, very intelligent aspects to our bodies, whether we're looking at how our stomach and our brain co-regulate and co-interact to understand like a gut feeling, or whether or not you may be struggling from some, personally for me, this was looking at IBS symptoms connected with stress, to the point that I was actually put on an antidepressant to combat those IBS symptoms, right? So it's all connected. So when we're noticing these imbalances in our system, it's a really great guidepost to understanding what it is we need in our lives. Now, the issue I take with highly spiritual people who are not actually grounded in the reality that they're in, or are looking to escape that reality, right? And I think we see this when we look at these billionaires who are so invested in looking at how to get to space and how to get away from the earth and how to leave Earth behind. These are highly disconnected individuals with serious root and sacral wounds, right? Like, it is so scary for them to touch base with the earth. It is easier for them to go up into their higher ideals and open it up in a way so that they can just be receiving all this knowledge and they never have to go down to the center. Now, this is a similar thing that I noticed with these highly spiritual people on Salt Spring very distinctly. I'm not talking about anybody in the last, 10 or 15 years. I'm talking about literally childhood experiencing of witnessing these people in these programs, these kind of mental programs, where it was all about ascension, all about going up and going it with God and going with all the Creator. And not to say that that is not warranted or it's not important, but it's very easy for us to go like very high up into spiritual realms when it is painful to look at things like our home, our early sexual experiences, our early relationships, the love we received as a child. And personally, for me, with all transparency, this resulted in me, after this sexual assault thing that happened about 6 years ago, I went straight into spirituality. Now, did that assist me in coming back down and connecting deeper with all of the root issues that I had, or all the sacral issues that I had? Absolutely. But we need to make that connection. We need to be in alignment with all parts of ourselves. And so, like, even today, I can notice I'm having some trouble speaking. Like, I had to clear my throat like 6 times recording this video before I pressed record or started over again. And I think that's because there's some stuff that I'm processing about my voice and sharing it. And that is so real for me, especially as I am kind of moving into the direction of wanting to make music in addition to my other creative pursuits. And that is my biggest fear, is to show up fully and share my voice. So I can connect with, okay, I have some wounding here, and this is my kind of project. This is like my pet project on myself. Another representation of this is like, I've been having really bad digestive flare-ups. I struggle with transitions, and I've had so much inflammation and bloating. My throat really wants attention. I've been having a lot of inflammation and bloating. And this is something that I've struggled with for like well over a decade, as I mentioned before, was something I went on medication for. Now, I'm coming to the place now, as I've come off of antidepressants and I've moved away from the pharmaceuticals that I was using, that I'm able to really notice, okay, what's happening in my life that reflects this inflammation in my body asking for something, right? And knowing that I was in this big transition moment, which is when my body feels most ungrounded. It's like taking time to really prioritize things in my life that give me supportive frameworks that help establish some security and safety for my nervous system and therefore for my body. It's all connected. So I just wanted to touch on these points as we enter week 6, because week 6 is looking more at our relationships to money and worth and value. And a lot of these things are derivative of our early childhood understanding and behaviors and learned systems, right? So, personally, for me, I grew up with a single mom who was an alcoholic addict who was like processing her pain as she was growing and evolving as a mother. She worked many different jobs in my early childhood. She had almost become a counselor and won an award for it before things got progressively more difficult in our family life with losing, you know, the love of her life through a really sad death. There's these things that have happened, but there's one thing that I noticed that was a stream is no matter what work she was doing, or let's say the baking job she had for a decade, which she described she never got a raise at, she was paid minimum wage for I don't know how many, let's say 5 years. And I was saying to her, that is not something you can blame somebody about. You established that relationship. So we have to look at where we're getting our learned beliefs from, right? So, me looking at my mom, I can see that she was courageous, she was intelligent, she was hardworking, but I can also see that she did not ask for what she was worth. She did not ask for what she was actually valued at. And self-esteem was a core issue. So naturally, me, her child, I'm going to witness her working incredibly hard, working at a very low wage, and assume this is just the standard. This is just kind of the point that we're existing at. Similarly, you know, um, my stepfather who passed, he was extremely authentic and caring and did not have any relationship to money. And so he would undercharge all the time to the point that people literally would leave his bicycle shop and be like, he was trying to charge me $2 for like renting bikes. I don't trust that guy, because he was so genuine. People didn't know how to react to it. So I can see there is a chronic nature in my family system of undervaluing and underpaying. So that's been like something, a big progress point for me is learning how to say, hey, this is what my rate is. This is where I meet you. And the more I tend to go into my people pleasing or a desire to kind of cooperate on a level that is giving more than I'm actually willing to give, it always backfires for me. And this is a really hard learned lesson, because often I want to help people and I want to give people something to support them. But sometimes when we don't create those strict boundaries, we kind of are just like this open, boundaryless kind of sphere where a different energy can emerge. And so creating this structure of security and safety, both in our body and in our relationships with others, is essential. Now, self-worth is a very curious thing, and it's something that is subject to change, and something I've been reflecting on, because I think self-worth and love are so related to money and these dynamics that I think really getting clear. And I think this whole process of doing Pearl Portal is getting really clear on what our desires are and who we are and what we want. And I think this is a great time to introduce some of the human design principles into the work that we're doing for self-reflection, because how we work is very essential. So, for instance, I am a generator. That means, and I really struggled with this for a while, it means that I have so much energy to pour into projects. I can just go and go and go. As long as I'm feeling inspired, I'm just like one after another. This is an interesting thing for me to realize, because my partner is a projector. I have a lot of projectors in my life, and my partner is a projector. And though he does not behave like one, when he's done, he needs to go to sleep, he needs rest. It is like a very clear boundary for him. And for a while, I would try to be thinking, I need at least 8.5 hours sleep. I need 9 hours sleep. I need to go to bed at this time in order to support my sleep schedule and all these other things. But I would lay awake, unable to sleep because I'd have a creative idea or I'd have an anxious thought. Now, I've learned now as a generator that if I have this energy still going, I need to pour it into something. So whether that's me waking up at 3:30 in the morning and doing some writing or listening to music or reading, these are things that I really have to follow the impulse of. Even though I might be thinking in my head, I need my beauty sleep. Ultimately, it is going to offer me so much more by doing that. Now, my profile is 2-4, which is perceived as hermit opportunist. Um, there was another one that was like, there's all these different titles that they go by, essentially. But the main point is I am not somebody, the 2 part is I'm not somebody who is usually sharing all the things that I'm doing. I'm a very creative person. I'm really good at doing things, but I don't really share it with everyone. And when I do, people are like, wow, why don't you share that more? This is a part of my profile that explains so much for me. The 4 aspect is more related to how outgoing and social I can be and how I make connections, and how literally in my life, the connections I make are like the building blocks and the ladder in which I am connecting to other people. Now, negatively, this could be perceived as a social climber, I think. But the thing is, when you're rooted in doing it out of a place of like truth, when it's connected deeper to who you are on a foundational level, there are so many people I would love to have relationships with. I would love to have deep bonds with. There's incredible people everywhere that I love so much. But can I invest so much of my time and energy into a deep friendship? Friendships take a lot of work. This is something that I've learned going into my 30s, is like the people you want to have around you are people you're investing a lot of time and energy into. That is how friendship works. So for me, I can't give that away to everyone all the time. When I have a moment and I can connect with somebody on a deeper level, I will absolutely do it. But when it comes to the people I call regularly or the people who I'm texting with regularly, usually these are my core people because I don't have a ton of energy to extend. And this is something I'm really learning through the process of this whole practice as well, because I do think that there's value that I want to share with other people and connections I want to make for other people. But a big part of this is like doing the first activity, which is like purposely going out of my way and sharing. Now, what I would like to say, I'm curious how everybody is going in this process. We're going into week 6, so we've just recovered a sense of possibility. And the things I'm noticing right now is that place and space is very essential to understanding ourselves. So depending where you are in the world, how that can impact who you are and your sense of self. So for instance, being on Salt Spring for me is something so deeply cathartic. I feel like I go into my hermit energy. I can pull away from culture and just like really restore myself. I have a moon letter that I'm actually writing about this currently. But then we also have this energy of outward facing, like opportunity, which for me, I'm connecting with while I'm in London. So when I come to London, I feel a renewed sense of self-worth. I feel a reconnection to my more creative and outgoing parts. I am more open to doing things that are otherwise really scary and intimidating. And it also validates this feeling of being like on Salt Spring, I'm a big fish in a small pond. In London, I'm a small fish in a big pond, or maybe a big fish in a big pond. I don't know. You can tell me that. But there's something about the space here and the opportunity for something around any corner that's really, really beautiful to me. And it just connects to so many more people and experiences, and it just restores this sense of like creative inspiration. I also love, 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 love just being inspired by people and how they dress, how they express themselves. I think London has a really interesting, unique energy because it's so connected to the punk scene, and the punk scene is so against kind of these formats of essentially, I'm going to try to clarify what I'm saying. I noticed when I lived in Vancouver, it's like you bought the Arc'teryx jacket as a kind of signal of wealth to everybody that was around you. It's like, I have this Arc'teryx coat. I have this Issey Miyake please dress. I have these specific, toga slides, whatever it is. And there's no shame in that because I want those toga slides. I have an Arc'teryx raincoat that I don't wear. And I just that was me. I was in that kind of fight for coming up in this culture. Now, in London, there's kind of this opposing energy because of the punk scene, which is we are not buying, that is too posh. We're not buying into this culture of overconsumption. This is not why we're here. Now, of course, this doesn't apply to everything, but this applies to the parts that I notice in London that I love. And the punk scene is very against overconsumption, brands, anything that's too in your face. It's kind of gross. And I think it's just interesting also because there's this perceived idea of what is a posh culture, or in terms of, let's say, I love Swedish design, for instance, but a common trope of Swedish style versus, which could be very white, right? And then you have a culture that's a total melting pot. Not to say Sweden doesn't have that, but it's just this opposing energy, Vivienne Westwood wanting to showcase things that push the envelope. There's an envelope pushing energy to it that is really inspiring to me because it's a reminder that the status quo is not all there is. We are here to create in relationship to it and in response to it. So those are some core things for me that I'm thinking about with that and sense of style and expression. But yeah, going into money, creative abundance, talking about God and our relationship to God, I just hope that you have more connections, that whether your artist state is a deeper restorative connection to something that makes you feel really inspired and connected and a part of the world. And I'm not sure what, depending where you are, what that may be. And then also, I'll be adding some prompts below on human design and reflecting on what our human design is. And then we can talk in the comments or we can connect in the group chat. Now, I'm trying to think of anything else I need to share. I'm going to be I'm going to St. Michael's Church tonight for an organ practice. They're practicing on the organ. I'm really excited. It was only £6 to go, and that is going to be my artist date. And I basically am just saying, if you feel any inspiration this week to go do something that's out of your comfort zone as an artist date, I think you should do it. Okay, well, what else? I think that's all for today and for this week. Stick to your morning pages. If you guys want to meet for a group session, let me know in the chat and we'll make it happen. Okay, thanks for being here.